A struggling single mother walked into the wrong hotel room. The Mafia boss dragged her in and said, "This is my fiancé." Lila swiped the keycard on the penthouse suite door, a card she had picked up by mistake from her cleaning cart when rushing to leave after receiving news that her 5-year-old daughter was in the emergency room. The hotel uniform hung loosely on her exhausted frame, her dark hair escaping from its ponytail. Her eyes red from tears she had no time to wipe. The door clicked open before she realized her error. Inside, a man in a tailored black suit stood with his back to the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights outlining his silhouette like a fallen angel. His face was carved from marble, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Behind him, 3 figures sat in leather chairs, arranged like a tribunal of executioners. An older man with cold eyes that matched the younger one, a woman in red whose smile dripped poison, and another man whose presence reeked of old money and older sins. The man by the window locked his gaze onto Lila for 1 sharp second. She saw calculation flicker behind those dark eyes. Then his hand shot out, fingers wrapping around her wrist like a vice, and he yanked her across the threshold before she could breathe. The door slammed shut. Marcus positioned Lila beside him like a shield, like a weapon, like the only card he had left to play. His voice cut through the room cold enough to freeze blood. "This is my fiancé." Lila stood frozen. She understood in that horrifying instant that a single mistake had just thrown her into a war between devils. And she, a woman with nothing left to lose except a dying child, had just become the bride of the most dangerous man in the city. If this story hooked you, smash that like button. Share this with someone who loves a good mafia romance, and subscribe so you do not miss what happens next. One sentence changed her life, but this was just the beginning. The silence in the room was suffocating, thick enough to choke on. Salvatore Valenti was the first to speak, his voice slow and scraping like a knife being sharpened on stone. "Son, I think you owe us an explanation." His eyes never left Lila, traveling from the wrinkled hotel uniform to her loose hair and the roughened hands of a working woman. The look made her feel like an insect under a microscope, dissected piece by piece. Bianca Moretti sprang to her feet, her blood-red dress swirling with the movement. "Are you joking, Marcus?" Her voice shrill. "What kind of farce is this? We had an agreement. The families had an agreement. And you bring a cleaning girl to tell me she is your fiancé." Marcus did not move. He kept Lila close beside him, his hand resting on her back like a silent warning. "I do not owe anyone an explanation about my personal life. Lila and I became engaged 3 months ago. I kept it secret to protect her from our world, but now that you have pushed me into a corner, I have no choice but to tell the truth." Moretti, the third man in the room, rose slowly. He did not shout like his daughter, nor was he cold like Salvatore. He simply looked at Marcus with the eyes of a man who had survived countless wars. "This is an insult to the Moretti family. Marcus, my daughter has waited for this marriage for 2 years. We agreed on the terms. And now you tell me it was all a joke," Marcus replied without blinking. "I never agreed to anything. My father agreed, the council agreed, but no one asked me." Salvatore stepped forward, the distance between father and son shrinking as the tension thickened. He tilted his head to look at Lila, his lips curving into a smile that did not reach his eyes. "What is this girl's name?" "Lila Morgan." Marcus answered for her. Salvatore nodded slowly. "Lila Morgan. I will remember that name." The simple sentence carried such a clear threat that Lila felt her spine go cold. She wanted to cry out that this was a mistake, that she had only wandered into this room by accident, that her daughter was in the hospital and she needed to leave immediately. But survival instinct honed by years in hell told her to stay silent. In this world, one wrong word could cost her life. Bianca moved closer to Lila, her eyes narrowing like a snake's. She sniffed the air around her and sneered, the smell of cleaning chemicals and sweat, a perfect match for the air of the Valenti Empire. Marcus stepped forward, placing himself between Bianca and Lila. "Never speak about her like that again." For the first time that night, his voice carried real threat. No longer ice, but a low, burning fire. Bianca took a step back, not out of fear, but out of surprise. She had never seen Marcus protect anyone like that. Salvatore observed everything with eyes that missed nothing. At last, he turned to Moretti. "We will discuss this later. Tonight is not the right time." He glanced at Lila one last time. "But Marcus, I hope you know what you are doing. Those who stand in the way of the Valenti family never meet a good end." The 3 of them left, leaving the room drowned in heavy silence. Bianca paused at the door, turned back to Lila with a poisonous smile. "I will see you again soon, Lila Morgan. Very soon." The door closed. Lila exhaled, her knees shaking so badly she almost collapsed. She looked at Marcus, the man who had just pulled her into hell, and tried to say something, but before she could form a single word, her legs gave out and the world tilted. Marcus caught Lila before she touched the floor, one arm around her waist, lowering her onto the nearest sofa. He was not gentle, but he was not rough either. Only efficient, as if he were moving an object rather than a person. Lila sat there trying to steady her breathing while Marcus poured a glass of water and placed it in front of her. Drink, not a suggestion but a command. Lila took the glass with trembling hands, sipped, and set it down. Please, sir, she said, her voice hoarse. I do not know what is happening, but my daughter is in emergency care. She is only 5 years old, and she has a heart condition. I need to leave right now, please. Marcus did not answer. He took out his phone, dialed and spoke a few short words. Dante, I need everything on Lila Morgan in 10 minutes. Everything. He ended the call and looked at Lila with unreadable eyes. What is your daughter's name? Rosie. Lila answered at once, a mother's instinct stronger than fear. Rosie Morgan. She is at St. Mary's Hospital. I got a call an hour ago saying she was struggling to breathe and was taken into the emergency room. I was on my way when I walked in here by mistake. Please, this is a misunderstanding. I am just a cleaning woman. I have nothing to do with you or those people. Marcus sat in the chair opposite her, legs crossed, relaxed as if they were discussing the weather instead of her future. You are right. You are not involved. That is exactly why you are valuable. Before Lila could ask what he meant, his phone vibrated. He read the message, and she saw the corner of his mouth lift slightly. Not a smile, but something more dangerous. Lila Morgan, 30 years old, Marcus began reading without looking up. Former third-year medical student who dropped out after becoming pregnant. Married Daniel Morgan, a drug addict who died of overdose 2 years ago, leaving a debt of $150,000 to loan sharks. Daughter Rosie Morgan, 5 years old, congenital heart disease, needs surgery within 2 months, costing $200,000. Currently working 3 jobs, living in a 12-square-meter apartment in the southern slums of the city. No insurance, no family, no help. He looked up at her. Did I miss anything? Lila felt stripped bare, her entire miserable life laid out in a few cold sentences. She wanted to cry, scream, run, but she did nothing. She only sat there looking at the man holding her fate in his hand. What do you want? She asked quietly. Marcus stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. I need a fake fiancé for 3 months. You saw the people in that room. My father wants to force me to marry Bianca Moretti to unite the families. But I know Bianca. Marrying her would be signing my own death warrant. He turned back to Lila. You appeared exactly when I needed an escape. So what is the deal? Lila asked, her heart pounding. 3 months pretending to be my fiancé. Marcus said, appear with me at events, live in my house, act as if we love each other. In return, I will pay off your $150,000 debt, cover all your daughter's medical bills and surgery. And when the 3 months end, you receive an additional $500,000 in cash to start a new life. Lila stopped breathing. The money was enough to change her and Rosie's lives completely. But she was not foolish. There was no free lunch, especially from a Mafia boss. What if I refuse? Marcus looked at her, his eyes dark. You have seen their faces. You have heard things no one is allowed to hear. Do you think they will let you walk away as if nothing happened? Lila understood. This was not a choice. It was live or die, but at least this path gave her a chance to save Rosie. She closed her eyes, thought of her daughter's small face, her morning laughter, the way Rosie held her hand when afraid. Then she opened her eyes and looked straight at the devil. I agree, but you must never touch my daughter. Never. Marcus nodded, his lips curving into the first smile of the night. I never harm children. That is my rule. He stepped closer and held out his hand. Welcome to hell, Lila Morgan. Lila took his hand, cold as ice, and in that moment she knew she had sold her soul to the devil to save her little angel. 36 hours before the devil's hand closed around Lila's wrist, her life had already been another version of hell. At 4 a.m, the alarm rang in the tiny studio apartment in the southern slums of the city. Lila opened her eyes, her body aching as if she had been run over by a truck. She had slept only 3 hours after the dishwashing shift the night before. Beside her, Rosie lay curled on the thin mattress, her breathing faint and wheezy through parted lips. Lila watched her daughter and saw the pallor of her skin, the dark circles under her closed eyes, the small chest rising and falling with effort. Her heart tightened as it did every morning when she looked at her child. Rosie had been born with a hole in her heart, a condition the doctor said needed surgery as soon as possible. But as soon as possible meant $200,000. a number Lila could not dream of even if she worked herself to death. At 5 in the morning, Lila left Rosie with Mrs. Thompson, the 70-year-old neighbor who lived alone next door. Mrs. Thompson took no money, only said she was lonely, and Rosie gave her a reason to wake up each day. It was the only kindness in Lila's life, and she was grateful, to the point of tears whenever she thought of it. From 6 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon, Lila waited tables at Lucky's Diner. She carried trays, cleaned tables, endured the shouting of difficult customers, and the prying looks of the manager who always found ways to stand too close. The tips were small, the pay smaller, but she needed every cent. From 3 in the afternoon to 10 at night, she cleaned rooms at a 3-star hotel downtown. The work was heavy. Her knees hurt from kneeling to scrub bathroom floors. Her back ached from changing the sheets in dozens of rooms each day. From 11 at night to 3 in the morning, she washed dishes at the Rusty Nail Bar. The detergent ate into her skin, leaving her hands cracked and bleeding in winter. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Each month, Lila earned about $2,800. Rent took $600. Rosie's medicine took $400. Food, electricity, water, and bus fares together took another $500. The rest, $1,300. She paid to the loan sharks her former husband had borrowed from before he died. Daniel Morgan, the man she once thought was the love of her life, turned out to be her worst nightmare. He was a drug addict. He abused her when drunk, and borrowed from dangerous people to feed his habit. When he died of overdose 2 years ago, she thought she was free. But the loan sharks did not care who lived or died. They came to her and said she had to pay for her husband, $150,000 plus interest upon interest. She had paid off $30,000 in 2 years, but the debt was still like a monster that kept growing. Last week, a scar-faced man stopped her at the apartment door. He looked at Rosie, sleeping through the cracked door, and smiled. "The little girl is very cute. I hope you pay enough this month. Otherwise, we will have to take something else to make up for it." Lila did not sleep for 3 nights after that. Then the morning before yesterday, the doctor called. Rosie's condition was worsening faster than expected. The hole in her heart was growing. She needed surgery within 2 months instead of 6, as originally predicted. The cost was still $200,000, and they needed a $50,000 deposit by the end of next week. Lila hung up and cried in a public bathroom for 15 minutes. She did not have $50,000. She did not even have $5,000. She tried everything from bank loans to registering to sell a kidney, but nowhere accepted her. Then last night, she heard that the Blackstone Hotel was hiring a VIP room cleaner at double the normal pay. She applied and was hired immediately, because they were short-staffed for the evening shift. She thought it was a chance to earn a little more, even if it was only a drop in the ocean. She did not know that night she would pick up the wrong key card from the cleaning cart, step into the wrong penthouse, and stand before the most powerful mafia boss in the city. Fate never asks anyone's permission before it changes their life. While Lila was struggling with her own private hell, Marcus Valenti was facing his own demons as well. But Marcus's demons did not come from poverty or illness. They came from blood, from betrayal, from the man he called father. 25 years earlier, Marcus was 12 years old. The boy was sitting inside his mother's closet, watching through a cracked door, something no child should ever see. Elena Valenti, the gentlest woman Marcus had ever known, was kneeling on the floor with blood running from the corner of her mouth. She had tried to escape Salvatore, tried to take Marcus far away from the criminal empire her husband had built, but no one leaves the Valenti family. No one. Salvatore stood before his wife, his voice cold as ice. "You think you can take our son away? You think you can betray the family and survive?" Elena lifted her head, looked at her husband with eyes no longer afraid. "I do not want my son to become a monster like you." Salvatore smiled. Then he drew his gun. Marcus did not remember whether he screamed or stayed silent. He only remembered the gunshot, the way his mother fell to the floor, the way her eyes stayed open as life left them. And he remembered Salvatore turning toward the closet, opening the door, looking at the trembling boy inside. "This is your first lesson, Marcus," his father said. "Never let your heart lead you. It only brings death." From that day, Marcus built a wall around his heart. He grew up inside his father's empire, learned how to kill before he learned how to love, learned how to torture before he learned how to trust. He became the perfect weapon Salvatore wanted. Cold, ruthless, without weakness. People called him the heartless devil, and Marcus never objected, because his heart had died with his mother on the floor 25 years ago. The night before meeting Lila, Marcus sat in Salvatore's office at the main estate. Salvatore had stepped back from the front 5 years earlier, giving Marcus the title of boss but still holding real power through the family council. And today, he summoned Marcus, to announce a decision that could not be changed. "You will marry Bianca Moretti," Salvatore said, as if discussing the weather. "The wedding will take place in 3 months. The council has agreed. The Moretti family has agreed. There is nothing to discuss." Marcus looked at his father, his voice without emotion. "I do not agree." Salvatore laughed, a sound that brought Marcus back to the night his mother died. "You do not have the right to disagree. This marriage will unite the 2 largest mafia families on the East Coast. We will control everything from New York to Miami. This is the future of the Valenti Empire." "The future," Marcus repeated. "Or my death sentence." He knew Bianca Moretti. He had had her investigated long ago. Vincent DeLuca, Bianca's former husband, had died of heart failure 3 years earlier at the age of 32. The doctors said it was natural. But Marcus knew the truth. Bianca had poisoned him with a drug that left no trace, a drug that slowly stopped the heart over months without suspicion. After Vincent died, Bianca inherited everything and returned to the Moretti family as a grieving widow. No one knew the truth except Marcus, and if he married her, he knew he would be next. Bianca did not want a husband. She wanted power. She would marry Marcus, bear an heir, then remove him to hold both the Valenti and Moretti empires in her hands. A perfect plan, except Marcus had no intention of dying young. But he also had no escape. The council had decided. His father had decided. Refusal meant being overthrown, exiled, or worse. Marcus spent the whole night searching for a way out of the trap. He found none, until the penthouse door opened, and a thin woman in a hotel uniform stepped inside. In her desperate eyes, Marcus saw what he needed. A card no one expected. A way out that fell from heaven into hell. Immediately after the agreement was sealed with that cold handshake, Marcus ordered Dante to take Lila to St. Mary's Hospital. The black Bentley glided through the night streets, and Lila sat in the back seat like someone without a soul. She had just sold her soul to the devil, and she did not know whether to cry or laugh. But when the car stopped at the hospital gate, all those thoughts vanished, and only one thing remained in her mind. Rosie. Lila ran through the hospital corridors without needing directions because she had memorized every corner of the place. After countless emergency visits with her daughter, she stopped in front of room 37, her heart pounding, her hands shaking as she pushed the door open. Rosie lay on the hospital bed, small like a doll among wires and machines. An oxygen mask covered half her pale face, but her chest was rising and falling steadily. The on-duty doctor told Lila that Rosie was out of danger. She had suffered a severe breathing attack, but they had stabilized her. However, this did not change the fact that Rosie needed surgery urgently within 2 months. Lila nodded, but for the first time in many years, those words did not make her want to cry. Because now she could pay for that surgery at a price she did not dare to think about. She sat by Rosie's bed all night, holding her little hand in her own. Sometime around 3 in the morning, Rosie opened her eyes and looked at her mother with wide brown eyes. "Mommy," she whispered through the oxygen mask. "I am here, my love." Lila bent down and kissed her forehead. "I am not going anywhere." Rosie smiled faintly and went back to sleep. Lila watched her with tears running down her face. She had done the right thing. Whatever the cost, she had done the right thing. Dante appeared in the early morning, when the first sunlight slipped through the hospital window. He was a tall man with cropped black hair and sharp eyes, but the way he looked at Rosie held a softness that did not match his frightening appearance. He handed Lila a new phone, thinner and more expensive than anything she had ever held. "From now on, you contact through this," Dante said in a low, brief voice. "The boss's number is already saved. Only call when necessary." He glanced around the small hospital room. "When the girl is strong enough to move, we will take you both to your new place." That afternoon, the doctor allowed Rosie to be discharged on the condition of close monitoring. Lila planned to take her home to the old apartment, but Dante shook his head. "There is no old apartment anymore. Your things have been moved." The car took them through unfamiliar streets, areas Lila had never been to. Then it stopped in front of a glass and steel skyscraper shining like a work of art. "The penthouse is on the 50th floor," Dante said. "The boss owns the whole building." When the elevator doors opened, Rosie's mouth fell open. The penthouse was 20 times larger than their old apartment. White marble floors gleamed. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the whole city. Cream leather sofas, a 12-seat dining table, an open kitchen with a black granite island. "Mommy," Rosie whispered, clutching her torn teddy bear named Mr. Buttons. "Are we dreaming?" Lila swallowed, trying to stay calm, though inside she was just as overwhelmed. "No, my love. This is our new home." A warm voice came from behind them. "Welcome." Lila turned and saw a woman around 40 with neatly pinned black hair and gentle brown eyes. She wore a simple, elegant black outfit, and her smile was the warmest thing Lila had seen since entering this world. I am Nina Santos, the housekeeper here, she said, stepping closer to Rosie. And this beautiful girl must be Rosie. I hear you like hot chocolate. Let us go to the kitchen, and I will make you a special cup. Rosie looked at her mother for permission, and when Lila nodded, she shyly placed her hand in Nina's. Lila watched them walk into the kitchen, heard Rosie begin to chatter about Mr. Buttons, heard Nina's soft laughter in reply. And for the first time since entering hell, Lila felt a small spark of hope. Perhaps among the demons there were still angels in hiding. Marcus appeared that evening after Rosie had fallen into a deep sleep in a bedroom decorated like it belonged to a little princess. Lila was sitting in the living room looking out at the city through the enormous glass wall, trying to understand how her life had changed so violently. In just 24 hours, the sound of the elevator opening made her turn. Marcus walked in, still in the same black suit as when she first met him, but now without the city lights behind him. He looked even more frightening. He did not greet her or ask anything. He walked straight over and stopped in front of Lila, holding a stack of papers. This is a confidentiality agreement. He placed it on the table. You will sign before we begin. Lila took the papers and skimmed the dense legal text she barely understood. She only knew that violating any clause would have serious consequences. She signed without asking another question. Marcus nodded and slipped the papers into his jacket. Now the rules. Rule 1, you never tell the truth to anyone. Not the staff, not the guards, not anyone you meet in my world. To everyone you are my fiancé. We dated in secret for 6 months before getting engaged. Lila nodded. Rule 2, in front of others, you act as if you love me. Marcus continued without emotion. Hold hands, look at me with affection, lean on my shoulder. Anything that makes people believe we are a real couple. Can you do that? I will try, Lila said. Not try, Marcus cut in. Do or do not. In my world, one moment of weakness can get both of us killed. Lila swallowed. I will do it. Rule 3, Marcus continued. Never ask about my work. You do not want to know, and I do not want to tell. What I do is not your concern. Your job is to act, not to be curious. Lila did not object. She did not want to know what Marcus did. She had seen enough to be afraid. Rule 4, and this is the most important rule. Marcus stepped closer. His dark eyes locked on Lila's. Never think about running. I will find you anywhere in this world. And when that happens, our agreement will end in a way you will not like. Lila felt the blood in her body turn a few degrees colder. She understood the threat, and she also knew she had no intention of running. Not when Rosie needed that surgery. I understand, she said. Anything else? About your daughter. Marcus hesitated for the first time since entering. The child will have the best medical care, the best school, and protection 24/7. But you must not let her know the truth about me. Then what am I to her? Lila asked. Anything you want to say, Marcus replied. Just not the truth. Before Lila could answer, small footsteps sounded in the hallway. Rosie ran out, her curly hair messy from sleep, clutching Mr. Buttons. She stopped when she saw Marcus, her wide eyes looking at the tall stranger in the living room. Mommy, who is that? Rosie asked sleepily. Lila started to stand to pull her back, but Rosie ran up to Marcus before she could react. She tilted her head back to look at him because he was so tall. Who are you? Rosie asked again. Marcus stood there frozen like stone. It had been a long time since anyone had looked at him with such pure curiosity. No fear, no calculation, just clear brown eyes waiting for an answer. I am Marcus. Hesitated. Rosie tilted her head, studying him a few more seconds. Then she said something that left Marcus unmoving. Are you sad? Your eyes look very sad. Like Rosie when she misses Daddy. Daddy went away and did not come back. The room was so silent the heartbeat could be heard. Lila held her breath, not knowing how Marcus would react. She had prepared for anger, for coldness, for anything, but she was not prepared for what happened next. Marcus looked at Rosie for one long moment. Then without a word, he turned and walked quickly back to the elevator. The doors closed and he was gone. Rosie turned to her mother, confused. Is he mad at me, Mommy? No, my love. Lila pulled her into her arms and kissed her curls. He just had to go. That night in the villa, 15 minutes away, Marcus lay in bed staring at the ceiling. He could not sleep. Rosie's wide brown eyes kept appearing in his mind. Are you sad? Your eyes look very sad. For 25 years, no one had asked him that. No one had seen the sadness he hid behind his cold mask. No one until a 5-year-old child with a hole in her heart looked straight into his soul and spoke the thing the world did not see. 3 days after the night, Marcus left without a word. Lila was informed that she would be introduced to high society at the weekend. Nina brought the news along, with a team of 5 people she called specialists. Lila did not know what she needed specialists for until they began to work. The first was a platinum blonde woman named Victoria, Marcus's personal fashion designer. She looked Lila up and down with a judging eye, murmured something about body proportions and skin tone, then began measuring every centimeter of her. Over the next 2 days, an endless stream of gowns, high heels, and jewelry arrived at the penthouse. Lila tried on each one standing before the mirror while Victoria and her assistants evaluated, nodded, or shook their heads, added or removed. The second was a makeup artist named Sasha, a man with an artist's hands and knife, sharp eyes. He spent hours analyzing Lila's face, testing different looks until he found a style he called elegant without being showy, seductive without being cheap. The third was a hair specialist named Miguel, who transformed Lila's dry black hair into silky, glossy waves. He cut, trimmed, lightly colored, and treated it until her hair looked as if it had stepped out of a fashion magazine. But the last two surprised Lila the most. A walking coach and a communication coach. The walking coach, an older woman named Margaret with posture straight as a ruler, made Lila balance books on her head and walk around the living room for hours. She corrected every step, every tilt of the shoulder, every angle of the chin. "You are Marcus Valenti's fiancé," she said sternly. "You do not walk like a maid. You walk like the owner of the room." The communication coach, a middle-aged man named Harrison, taught Lila how to speak to high society, how to greet, how to shake hands, how to smile without showing too much teeth, how to answer probing questions without revealing anything. He gave her a list of important guests with information about their families, preferences, and conversational taboos for each person. Lila memorized everything as if studying for an exam, because in truth it was an exam. One that if she failed, she would lose more than points. The night before the party, Lila stood alone in the dressing room looking into the mirror. The woman there was someone she did not recognize. The dark blue evening gown hugged her body, highlighting curves she did not know she had. Diamonds glittered at her neck and ears. Her hair was swept up elegantly with a few strands framing her perfectly made-up face. She looked like a queen, but inside she was still Lila Morgan, the cleaning woman with rough hands and a fearful heart. Nina entered and stood behind her, looking into the mirror. "You look beautiful," she said softly. "I do not know if I can do this," Lila whispered, her voice trembling. "They will see through me. They will know I do not belong to that world." Nina placed a hand on her shoulder. "No one belongs to that world at the beginning. They all have to learn to play the role." She looked at Lila in the mirror. "The only difference between you and them is that you know you are acting. They have forgotten that they once were too." Lila took a deep breath, trying to swallow her anxiety. Tomorrow she would step into a den of wolves wearing human skin, and she had to make them all believe she was one of them. The party was held at the main Valenti estate, an Italian-style palace on a hill overlooking the entire city. When the black Rolls-Royce stopped at the gate, Lila felt her heart trying to leap from her chest. She looked through the window and saw hundreds of luxury cars filling the courtyard. Men in expensive suits, and women in dazzling evening gowns. Stepping through the main doors, Marcus sat beside her, silent the entire way. Then he turned and held out his hand. "Remember the rules," he said without emotion. "From the moment we walk through that door, you are mine." Lila placed her hand in his and felt the strength of his fingers closing around hers. She nodded, not trusting her voice. When they entered the grand hall, everything seemed to freeze for a moment. Hundreds of eyes turned toward them. The music continued. The conversations went on, but Lila could feel the shockwave move through the room. Marcus Valenti, the heartless devil, the man who never brought anyone to any party, was standing with a strange woman. And not just standing, he was holding her hand, as if she were the most precious thing in the world. Whispers rose like ocean waves. "Who is she? I have never seen her in our world." "Marcus Valenti has a fiancé. Since when?" Lila tried to keep her posture straight as Margaret had taught, smile lightly as Harrison had instructed, and walk as if she owned the room as Nina had said. But inside she was trembling. Marcus led her through the crowd, nodding to familiar faces, making brief introductions. "This is Lila Morgan, my fiancé." No explanation, no detail, just 6 cold words, placing her in a position the entire room had to accept. Salvatore stood in a corner with a glass of whiskey in his hand, his eyes never leaving Lila. He said nothing, did not approach, but that gaze was enough to make Lila feel skinned alive. He was assessing her, searching for weakness, planning. Lila knew that as surely as she knew the sun rose in the east. An hour passed, and Lila began to think that perhaps everything would be fine. She had spoken with a few guests, answered probing questions with vague replies Harrison had prepared. She had smiled correctly, stood correctly, and no one seemed suspicious. Then Bianca appeared. She wore a red dress as bright as blood, lipstick the same shade, a smile sharp as a blade. She approached Lila while Marcus was busy speaking with a group of men in the corner, leaving Lila alone by the table. Lila Morgan, Bianca said, her voice sweet as honey laced with poison. "I finally have a chance to speak with you privately." Lila turned, keeping her face calm. "Bianca," she replied, You look very beautiful tonight." Bianca laughed softly. "Oh, thank you, but I must say you are the one who impresses me. I do not know how a cleaning woman can transform into a princess in just a few days. Did they teach you how to walk, or do you still have the habit of kneeling to scrub floors?" Lila felt blood rush to her face, but she did not allow herself to react. She remembered Harrison's words, "Never let them see you hurt. It makes them stronger." "I am afraid you are mistaken," Lila replied evenly. "I have never had the habit of scrubbing floors. That is what people hire others to do." Bianca's eyes darkened for a split second. Then she smiled a laugh that did not reach her eyes. "Clever. But do you know something, Lila? Pretty clothes and clever words do not change who you are. You are just an outsider trying to slip into a world that is not yours, and sooner or later everyone will see that." With that, Bianca lifted her hand as if to adjust her hair, and as if by accident knocked the entire glass of red wine from a passing waiter onto Lila's dress. The red wine spread across the dark blue fabric like blood, leaving an ugly stain across Lila's chest and stomach. Whispers rose around them, eyes turned toward her. Bianca covered her mouth with a look of false shock. "Oh my goodness, I am so sorry, how clumsy of me." Lila stood there, red wine dripping onto the white marble floor, feeling every eye in the room waiting for her to collapse. Lila felt time freeze. She heard the whispers around her, saw the pity in some eyes, saw the victorious smile on Bianca's lips. In that moment, she remembered every time she had been humiliated in her life, the times customers threw tips in her face like alms for a beggar, the times the manager shouted at her in front of coworkers, the times her former husband called her useless when drunk. She had survived all of that. She would not collapse over a glass of wine. Lila took a deep breath and then did what no one in that room expected. She smiled, not a forced smile or a brave one, but a real smile, gentle and calm as if someone had just told her a dull joke. "Thank you for giving me a reason to change dresses," Lila said, her voice so steady she surprised herself. "I do not actually like this dress very much. Dark blue does not suit me as well as red. Perhaps next time I should wear red like you, Bianca, though I am not sure I could wear it as seductively as you." Bianca's smile froze. She had not expected that reaction. She had prepared for tears, for shame, for a cleaning girl exposed before high society, but Lila did not give her that. The whispers around them changed tone, no longer pity or mockery, but surprise and even admiration. An older woman nearby covered her mouth with a soft laugh. A man nodded as if reassessing Lila. Bianca opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, a hand settled on Lila's shoulder. Marcus stood there, his face as unreadable as always, but something in his eyes had changed. He looked at Lila not like a piece on a board or a tool, but like a person. Without a word, Marcus removed his jacket and draped it over Lila's shoulders, covering the wine stain on her dress. The jacket still warm with his body heat, carrying the scent of expensive cologne and something else Lila recognized as Marcus himself. Then his arm went around her waist, pulling her close. "We will leave early," Marcus said to the room, but his eyes never left Bianca. "My fiancée needs to change, and I think she has been enough entertainment for tonight." He led Lila through the crowd, his hand firm on her waist. Lila felt the heat of his palm through the thin fabric, and for the first time the touch was not as cold as before. It was not warm or gentle, but it was real, as if Marcus were speaking to her through touch instead of words. Salvatore stood by the path, watching them pass with unreadable eyes, his jaw tight. Bianca stood frozen in the hall, a fresh glass in her trembling hand. Outside, the night air hit Lila cold, and she shivered, realizing how tense she had been inside. The Rolls-Royce waited. Dante opened the door and they slid into the back seat. The car moved in silence. Lila watched city lights streak past like falling stars. She was still wearing Marcus's jacket and did not know if she should return it. Then Marcus spoke, breaking the silence. "You did well." Lila turned to him, unsure she heard right. "What? You did well?" Marcus repeated, still facing forward. "In there, how you handled Bianca, I did not expect it." Lila did not know what to say. It was the first time Marcus praised her, the first time he admitted she had done something right. She felt something warm spread in her chest, and she was not sure she liked it. "I am used to being humiliated," she said, honestly. "Bianca is not the first to try and belittle me, and she will not be the last." Marcus turned to look at her, his eyes hard to read in the car's darkness. "But you are the first who did not break." Lila looked at him, and in that moment she saw something beneath Marcus's cold mask. Not cruelty, not danger, but curiosity and perhaps just a little respect. 2 days after the party, Lila was invited to the main Valenti estate for a family dinner. Marcus said it was part of the act that she needed to appear as a future member of the family. Lila did not want to go, but she had no choice. The dinner was suffocatingly tense. Salvatore sat at the head of the table like a king on a throne, while Lila sat beside Marcus on the opposite side. They exchanged bland social talk, fake smiles, and calculating glances. Leela could barely swallow her food. When dinner ended, Marcus was called outside by one of his men for something urgent. He looked at Lila as if wanting to say something but only nodded and left. Lila stood and excused herself to go to the restroom, really just to escape the atmosphere for a few minutes. She walked down the long hallway lined with classical oil paintings and glittering crystal chandeliers. The mansion was beautiful like a museum, but cold like a tomb. Lila wondered how Marcus had grown up in a place like this. She was about to turn into the restroom when a figure blocked her path. Salvatore stood there, leaning against the wall, a glass of whiskey in his hand, a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Lila Morgan," he said, his voice like a snake's hiss. "At last we have a chance to speak alone." Lila stopped her survival instinct, screaming in her head to run, but she did not. She knew in this world those who run become prey. "Mr. Valenti," she said, trying to keep calm. "I do not think we have anything to discuss." Salvatore laughed, a sound that raised goosebumps on Lila's skin. He stepped closer, the smell of whiskey and cigars heavy. "Oh, we have much to discuss, such as who you are, where you come from, and what you think you are doing with my son." "I am Marcus's fiancée," Lila replied, "as you know." "Fiancée," Salvatore echoed with contempt. "You think I believe that farce? I have investigated you, Lila Morgan. I know who you are, a cleaning woman with a pile of debt and a sick child. Whatever game my son is playing is not important. What matters is you are standing in the way of the Valenti family, and those who stand in the way of the Valenti family." He tilted his head, his eyes cold as ice. "And up 3 meters underground." Lila felt the blood in her body turn cold, her knees wanted to give way, her hands to tremble, but she thought of Rosie, of her daughter's innocent face, of why she was here, and she did not allow herself to collapse. "I am not standing in anyone's way," Lila said, her voice shaking slightly but not retreating. "I am only trying to keep my daughter alive. If that means I have to stand in your world, then I will stand. But I have no intention of taking anything from you. I have nothing. Mr. Valenti, what do you threaten to take from someone who has nothing?" Salvatore looked at her, assessing with cold eyes, then laughed without humor. "Brave or foolish, I have not decided which, but remember my words. Lila Morgan, in this family the weak do not survive, and you." He stepped close, his breath hot on her cheek. "You are the weakest I have ever seen. Father?" Marcus's voice cut through the hall, cold and sharp as a blade. "What are you doing with my fiancé?" Marcus walked toward them with the gait of a predator moving toward prey. But here the prey was not Lila, it was Salvatore. For the first time, Lila saw something like discomfort flicker across Salvatore's face. He stepped back, his smile returning. "Just making conversation," he said. "I wanted to understand better the woman you plan to marry." Marcus stopped beside Lila, his hand on her back, warm and steady. "The woman I plan to marry does not need you to understand her," he said. "She is mine, and what is mine no one is allowed to touch, not even you." The two men stared at each other in tense silence. Then Salvatore nodded, raised his whiskey in a mocking salute, and walked away. Only when he disappeared around the corner did Lila breathe out. She turned to Marcus to thank him, but what she saw in his eyes stopped her. Not coldness, not calculation, but worry, if only for a second. "Are you all right?" he asked. Lila nodded, not trusting her voice, and in her chest, for the first time since entering this world, she felt something other than fear, something warm, dangerous, and she did not dare to name it. 1 week after the night Salvatore threatened Lila in the hallway, Marcus began to visit the penthouse more often. He did not explain why, and Lila did not ask. They still kept their distance, still stayed cold with each other in front of others, but something had changed. Some invisible thread had been tied between them, even though neither was ready to admit it. That night Lila woke at 2 a.m. to a strange sound from the living room. She lay still, listening, her heart beating faster. The elevator doors opened. Heavy footsteps. Labored breathing. She slipped out of bed, pulled a thin sweater around her shoulders, and quietly walked toward the sound. What she saw made her stop at the corner of the hallway. Marcus was sitting on the sofa, head bowed, hands braced on his knees. His white shirt was no longer white. It was soaked in blood from chest to stomach, from sleeves to wrists. Dark, dried blood and fresh red blood mixed like a nightmare painting. Lila covered her mouth to keep from screaming. She did not know whose blood it was, did not know what Marcus had done, did not know if he was hurt. She only knew this was the first time she was seeing Marcus's real world, the world he had warned her never to ask about. She meant to retreat, meant to pretend she had seen nothing, but before she could move, a tiny voice sounded behind her. "Mommy is Uncle Marcus, hurt." Lila turned in panic. Rosie stood there, hair messy from sleep, eyes still drowsy, clutching Mr. Buttons. She must have woken from a nightmare as on many nights before. "Rosie, go back to your room," Lila whispered, her voice shaking. "Uncle Marcus is fine." But Rosie did not listen. She had seen Marcus, and instead of fear she ran straight toward him. Rosie, no, Lila reached out, but too late. Rosie stood in front of Marcus, head tilted to one side, looking at him with wide eyes without fear. Marcus lifted his head. His eyes, usually cold as ice, were now clouded with something Lila could not name. He looked at Rosie like a ghost, like something impossible. "Where does it hurt?" Rosie asked seriously. "Like a tiny doctor. Rosie can kiss it better. Mommy says kisses make pain go away." Marcus did not answer, he only looked at her unmoving. Rosie was not discouraged. She reached out, took Marcus's bloody hand without hesitation, and pulled him to stand. "Come, Uncle, follow Rosie. Rosie will make you less sad." And strangely, Marcus let her lead him. The most ruthless mafia boss in the city, the man 1,000 people feared, was letting a 5-year-old hold his hand and lead him into the kitchen like a gentle lamb. Lila followed, stood at the kitchen door, barely breathing. Rosie dragged a small chair over, climbed up to reach the cupboard. She took out a carton of milk and a glass. "Mommy makes warm milk for Rosie. When Rosie is sad," she explained solemnly. "Rosie will make warm milk for Uncle." She poured the milk, placed it in the microwave, pressed the button as Nina had taught her. A minute later, the ding sounded. Rosie carefully carried the warm milk to Marcus, using both hands as if carrying treasure. "Drink," Uncle Rosie said. "Drink milk, and you will be less sad." Daddy was very sad, but Daddy had no warm milk, so Daddy went away and did not come back. "Uncle, drink milk and do not go like Daddy, okay?" Marcus looked at the glass of milk in the child's hands, at the wide brown eyes waiting at the tiny hands, trembling to keep the milk from spilling, and something inside him broke. He reached out, took the glass, his hands still bloody, but Rosie did not flinch. He raised it to his lips and drank sip by sip to the last drop. When he lowered the glass, Lila saw what she never thought she would see. Marcus's eyes, the eyes of the heartless devil, were wet. He was not crying, but his eyes glistened in the dim kitchen light. For the first time in 25 years since his mother died, Marcus Valenti felt like crying. Rosie smiled, bright as the sun. "See, warm milk makes you less sad." Then she turned to the kitchen doorway and waved at Lila. "Mommy, come here, Uncle Marcus is not sad anymore." Lila stood there, tears streaming down her face, watching her daughter do what the whole world could not, touch the heart of a monster. After the night of warm milk in the kitchen, everything between Lila and Marcus changed in a subtle way neither of them mentioned. He was still cold, still quiet, still came and went like a ghost, but sometimes Lila caught him looking at Rosie differently, softer, more human, and sometimes he looked at her that way too. A week later, Lila took Rosie to St. Mary's Hospital for a scheduled checkup. The doctor said Rosie's condition was stable. The surgery had been scheduled for the following month, and all costs had been fully paid. Lila knew who had paid, but she said nothing. After the appointment, Rosie needed the bathroom. Lila led her down the hallway, and as they passed the pediatric wing, she glanced through the glass wall of a large room and stopped. Marcus was inside. Not Marcus in his familiar cold black suit, but Marcus in a rolled-up white shirt kneeling in front of a child in a wheelchair. Around him were dozens of other children, some bald from chemotherapy, some with leg braces, some holding teddy bears like Rosie, and all of them were laughing. Marcus was saying something to the child in the wheelchair, and the boy laughed. Marcus reached up and ruffled his hair, a gesture so gentle Lila could not believe her eyes. Then he stood, shook hands with a doctor, exchanged a few words, and the doctor nodded with gratitude. Lila stood frozen, trying to process what she was seeing. The man the city called the Heartless Devil was here among sick and orphaned children, not to threaten or frighten, but to give. Then Marcus turned and saw her through the glass. Their eyes met, and for a moment Lila saw panic flash across his face before the cold mask returned. He said something to the doctor and stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind him. "What are you doing here?" Marcus asked, his voice hard as steel. "Bringing Rosie for her checkup," Lila replied calmly. "And you?" "None of your business," Marcus snapped. "You should not be here. You should not see this." Lila looked at him at the defensive way he stood, as if she had discovered the most shameful secret of his life, and she understood. He was not ashamed of doing good. He was ashamed of being seen, doing good. "You fund this pediatric wing?" she asked gently. Marcus clenched his jaw. "I am not a good man, Lila," he said harshly. "Do not look at me like a hero. I have killed people. I have done things you cannot imagine. Me being here does not change that." "I know," Lila replied calmly. "I do not think you are a hero, and I do not think you are good." Marcus looked at her waiting. "I just think you are human," Lila said, "someone who has been hurt, who has lost and is trying to live with what he has done like all of us." Marcus stood silent, his eyes on her with something Lila could not name. Not anger, not coldness, but confusion, as if she had said something he never expected anyone to say. Then Rosie's voice came from behind. "Mommy, I am done. Is Uncle Marcus here too?" Marcus turned and walked away before Rosie could run to him. He did not say another word, but Lila saw his shoulders tense and his steps quicken as if he were running from something more frightening than the enemies he faced every day. That night, Lila had a nightmare she dreamed. She was back in her old apartment. The loan sharks were dragging Rosie away, and she screamed, but no sound came out. She tried to run, but her legs would not move. She saw her former husband's face, his fists, blood, tears, pain. She woke with a strangled cry soaked in sweat, her heart pounding, and she saw Marcus sitting by her bed in the dim room on a chair someone had pulled up beside it. He did not speak, did not ask if she was all right, did not pretend concern with empty words. He only reached out and took her hand. His hand was warm, unlike before. Lila looked at him, her eyes still wet from the nightmare. She did not ask when he came or why he was there. She only held his hand and closed her eyes. Marcus sat there all night watching her sleep, his hand never leaving hers. And when the first light of dawn slipped through the curtains, he stood and left before she woke as if he had never been there. But when Lila opened her eyes, she could still feel the warmth of his hand imprinted on her skin. 2 weeks after the night, Marcus held her hand through the nightmare. A large charity event was held at the Blackstone Hotel, the same place where Lila had worked as a cleaner only weeks before. Now she returned as an honored guest in a deep red evening gown, designed especially for her by Victoria. Lila stood beside Marcus with her hand resting on his arm, smiling at unfamiliar faces as if she had done this all her life. She had grown used to the performance, to the camera, flashes, to the whispers behind her back. But she had never grown used to the way her heart beat faster whenever Marcus stood close. She told herself it was only fear, only tension, only a natural reaction of the body, but deep inside she knew it was something else, something far more dangerous. The evening went smoothly until Bianca appeared. She wore a shimmering gold dress, perfect waves in her hair, and the same poisonous smile. She walked straight to Marcus, ignoring Lila as if she did not exist. "Marcus, I want to dance with you," Bianca said loudly enough for those around to hear, "for old times, for what our families once had, and because their cameras are waiting." She glanced toward the nearby photographers with lenses ready. Lila understood immediately this was a trap. If Marcus refused, the media would write about a fracture between the two largest Mafia families. If Marcus agreed, they would capture an image of him dancing with Bianca, and every claim about Lila as his fiancée would become a joke. Bianca had calculated carefully. She knew how to corner him, but Bianca forgot one thing. Marcus did not play by other people's rules. "I am sorry, Bianca," Marcus said, his voice cold but polite, "but I promised the first dance to my fiancé." Then he turned to Lila and held out his hand. "Will you dance with me?" Lila looked at his hand, then into his eyes, and she saw something there, not a command, not a script, but a real invitation. She placed her hand in his. The orchestra began a waltz as Marcus led her onto the dance floor. All eyes turned toward them, cameras flashed endlessly. But when Marcus's hand settled on her waist, when he drew her close, everything else vanished. There was only them, two people in a chaotic world turning in a dance neither of them had been taught. Marcus led and Lila followed. They moved as if they had danced together their whole lives, as if their bodies had been made to fit. Lila looked up, his face only centimeters from hers, and he was looking at her, not with his usual coldness, but with something she had never seen before: desire, honesty, and perhaps fear. "This is not the script," Lila whispered, not knowing if she was asking or stating. "No," Marcus replied, his voice low and rough, "not the script." Then he bent down and kissed her. Not a staged kiss for the cameras, not a light touch on the cheek or forehead like before, but a real kiss. Lips on lips, deep and burning in front of hundreds of eyes and a million flashes. Lila should have pushed him away, should have remembered it was only an agreement, only 3 months of acting, only a path to save Rosie, but she did not. She kissed him back, wrapped her arms around his neck, pulled him closer, felt his warmth, his scent, his taste, and in that moment she knew she had made the greatest mistake of her life. She had fallen in love with Marcus Valenti. She had fallen in love with a Mafia boss. She had fallen in love with the heartless devil who had pulled her into hell. And the most terrifying thing was that she did not want to stop. When they parted, the world rushed back with applause, cameras, whispers. But Lila only saw Marcus's eyes still fixed on her, as if she were the only thing in existence. And across the room, Bianca stood frozen, her smile gone, replaced by the look of someone who had just declared war. The photograph of Marcus and Lila's kiss flooded the newspapers and social media the next morning. It was called the Kiss of the Year, proof of the secret love of the coldest Mafia boss in the city. But to Bianca Moretti, that photograph was a declaration of war. She sat in her own penthouse, staring at the image on her phone with eyes burning with hatred. She had waited for Marcus for 2 years, accepted every arrangement of her family, prepared her plan to become the mistress of both the Valenti and Moretti empires. And now a cheap cleaning woman was taking everything from her. Bianca was not someone who accepted defeat easily. That morning she called Victor Chen, a private investigator famous for digging up the dirtiest secrets. "Find everything you can about Lila Morgan," Bianca ordered. "I want to know every dark corner of her life. Do not miss anything." It took Victor Chen 5 days to finish. When he sat before Bianca with a thick file, her smile slowly spread like a snake that had found its prey. Daniel Morgan, Lila's former husband, was not just an ordinary drug addict. He had also been a small link in the opium trafficking ring of the Los Diablos gang, a rival of the Valenti family. 3 years earlier, the police had dismantled part of the network, and Lila Morgan had been summoned as a witness. She testified that she knew nothing about her husband's activities, that she was only a victim of a violent marriage. The police believed her. The court believed her. But Bianca did not need the truth. She needed a weapon. Among the photographs and documents Victor Chen collected, there were images of Lila standing outside a warehouse at night, waiting for her husband, images of her receiving a bag from a strange man that was actually just a laundry bag. Daniel had asked a friend to return, but in the dark, blurred photograph it looked like something else. And there was even a copy of Lila's court statement in which she admitted she had known about her husband's drug use for a long time but had not reported it. Bianca gathered everything, edited it, rearranged it, added and removed details. She created a completely new story. The story of a woman who not only knew about her husband's drug trafficking but was complicit, helped him and benefited from it. And worse than that, Bianca added, forged evidence showing that Lila was still in contact with Los Diablos, that she was a spy planted inside the Valenti family to destroy it from within. "Perfect," Bianca whispered as she admired the altered file. "Perfect." She brought the file to Salvatore that afternoon. The old man sat in his study, listening without expression, but as Bianca presented, each piece of evidence, each photograph, each carefully forged document, his eyes began to light up. "This is what we need," Salvatore said, turning the pages. "This cleaning girl is not just an outsider slipping into the Valenti family, she is a spy for the enemy. The council will never accept Marcus marrying a traitor." "When do we act?" Bianca asked, her eyes shining with excitement. "The council meeting next week," Salvatore replied. "We will present the evidence before all the leaders. Marcus will be forced to abandon the girl or lose everything. And if he still protects her," Bianca asked. Salvatore smiled, a smile cold as ice. "Then he will prove that he is unfit to lead the Valenti family, and I will have a legitimate reason to do what I should have done long ago. Remove him." Bianca nodded, satisfied. The trap was set, and Lila Morgan, along with her newly blossoming love, was walking straight into it without knowing. The council meeting was held in the basement of the Valenti estate, a room few were allowed to enter and even fewer were allowed to leave. 12 of the highest-ranking bosses of the Valenti Empire sat around a long oak table, their faces cold and terrifying like stone statues. Salvatore sat at one end of the table, and Marcus sat at the other. Between them stretched 10 meters of space, and also 25 years of unspoken hatred. Lila had been ordered to attend as the next step in the process of accepting her into the family. She stood beside Marcus in the elegant black dress Nina had chosen, trying to remain calm, while the air in the room felt thick like blood. She did not know she was standing before a tribunal. The meeting began with ordinary matters of territory, money, and enemies to be dealt with. Lila stood in silence, forcing herself not to show fear as violence and death were discussed like the weather. Then Salvatore rose. "Before we conclude, I have a matter to bring before the council," he said, his voice echoing through the room. "Concerning the woman my son has brought into our family." Marcus looked at his father, his eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" Salvatore did not answer. Instead, he gestured toward the side door. It opened, and Bianca stepped in holding a black leather case, a triumphant smile on her lips. Lila felt her blood turn cold at the sight of her enemy, respected leaders. Bianca began, her voice sweet as honey. "I am here with proof that the woman standing beside Marcus Valenti is not the beloved fiancée he claims. She is a spy planted by our enemies." Murmurs spread around the table. Marcus stood, his voice cold as ice. "What is this farce?" Bianca opened the case, pulled out a thick file, and walked around the table, placing copies before each leader. Daniel Morgan, Lila Morgan's former husband, was a member of the Los Diablos gang, the sworn enemies of the Valenti family. And Lila Morgan did not merely know this. She was complicit, she assisted, and now she is spying for them from within our family. "That is a lie," Lila cried, her voice shaking. "I have never been involved with any gang. My former husband was abusive and addicted. I was a victim, not an accomplice." Bianca sneered. "Then how do you explain these photographs?" She activated the projector, and an image appeared of Lila standing outside a warehouse at night. "This is a Los Diablos storage site," Bianca explained, "and this is Lila Morgan waiting to receive a delivery." The next image showed Lila receiving a bag from a man. "That is money?" or drugs, or both, Bianca said. And this photograph was taken only 2 months before she appeared in Marcus's room. Coincidence? Lila shook her head desperately. It was laundry, I can explain. But Bianca did not allow it. She continued, showing more images, more documents, more forged messages, proving Lila was still in contact with Los Diablos. Every piece of evidence was carefully altered enough to deceive untrained eyes. The leaders began shouting betrayal. One man roared, "She must be dealt with immediately." Another agreed, "Hang the woman as an example." Lila felt her knees weaken. She looked at Marcus, pleading with her eyes, but what she saw shattered her heart. Marcus was staring at her with a face cold as stone, without emotion, as if their kiss had never happened, as if the nights he held her hand through nightmares were only dreams. Silence. Marcus spoke and the room fell still. He stood and stepped beside Lila. She looked up, hoping he would protect her, but Marcus did not look at her. He looked at the leaders, then his father, then Bianca. "I will handle this matter," he said, his voice unwavering. "Take her to her room. Guard her. 24/7, no one approaches without my order." "Marcus," Lila whispered, her voice breaking. "Do you believe them?" Marcus finally looked at her, his eyes distant and cold as if she were a stranger. "I am not asking if you did it," he said. "I am asking about proof, and right now you have none to prove your innocence." 2 men stepped forward, seized Lila's arms and dragged her away through the door up the stairs into the room that was now her prison. The door slammed shut, the lock clicked coldly, and Lila collapsed to the floor in tears, realizing she had trusted the wrong person. A devil is still a devil even when he pretends to know how to love. 2 days passed in the locked room. Lila lost track of time of day and night, knowing only the 4 white walls and the terrifying silence. Food was brought 3 times a day, but she could barely eat. She thought only of Rosie. Where was her daughter? Was anyone taking care of her? Was she afraid when her mother did not come back? She begged the guards for news of Rosie, but they said nothing. They stood like statues, their faces cold as stone, refusing every plea. On the 3rd day, the phone Dante had given her vibrated. Lila grabbed it, hoping it was Marcus, hoping it was someone who could explain what was happening. But when she opened the message, her blood froze. It was a photograph. Rosie walking on the sidewalk near her school, holding Nina's hand, completely unaware she was being watched. The photo was taken from a distance, through a car window, as if someone were stalking the child. Beneath it was a message. "The little girl is so cute. How easy to reach." There was no sender name, but Lila knew who it was. "Bianca." Lila screamed. She pounded on the door, punched the wood until her hands bruised and bled. She screamed for Marcus to be let out to protect her daughter, but no one answered. She collapsed to the floor, clutching the phone to her chest, staring at Rosie's picture through tears. Her child, her little angel, was being threatened, and she was locked here powerless. She had sold her soul to save her child, and now she could not save her from the very demons she had bargained with. That night the door opened. Marcus entered alone, his face unreadable as always. Lila had no pride left. She ran to him, fell to her knees, grabbed his coat like a beggar. "Please," she sobbed, her voice hoarse from hours of screaming. "Do anything to me, kill me if you want. But please save Rosie. They are watching her. They will hurt her. Please, she is innocent. She is just a child." Marcus looked down at her, his eyes dark. He said nothing for a long moment, only watched the woman broken at his feet. Then he bent, took her arm and pulled her up. "Rosie is safe," he said, his voice low and firm. "She is in a safe room at a secret location with 4 guards on duty, 24/7, no one can touch her." Lila looked at him, not daring to believe. "But the photo." "The photo was taken before I ordered her moved." Marcus replied right after the meeting. "I had Dante take Rosie away. Bianca thought she could threaten you through the child, but she was 1 step behind me." Lila felt her knees weaken with relief, but she still did not understand. "Why?" she asked, tears still falling. "Why lock me here if you believe me? Why not protect me before them?" Marcus looked at her, and for the first time since entering she saw something else in his eyes, not cold but pain. "I did not say I do not believe you," he said, slowly weighing each word. "I believe you. I know the evidence is fake, but in my world truth matters less than proof. If I defended you before the council, with nothing to prove your innocence, they would think I was weak, think I was ruled by emotion, and they would kill both of us." He lifted his hand to her cheek, wiping away her tears. "I need time to find proof against Bianca. I need you here safe while I do that. I know you are afraid, I know you are hurting, but I need you to trust me one more time. Can you do that?" Lila looked into the devil's eyes and saw something she did not expect. "Truth. I trust you," she whispered. Marcus nodded, and then did something she did not expect. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, as if she were the most precious thing he feared losing. After the night Marcus held her in the locked room, everything changed. The door was no longer locked, but Lila stayed because she understood it was the safest place. Marcus brought her copies of all the evidence Bianca had presented to the council, along with a laptop and a request. Find the flaw, you are the only one who can do it. Lila sat down and began examining every document, every photograph, every tiny detail. She was no longer the weak cleaning girl. She was a third-year medical student who had once topped her class in toxicology, who had dreamed of becoming a doctor before life pushed her into the abyss. And now the knowledge she thought she had, lost, became the weapon that could save her. It took 2 days and countless cups of coffee before Lila found the first crack. In one photograph showing her outside the Los Diablos warehouse, there was a small detail in the corner Bianca had missed. A medicine bottle on a nearby trash bin with the label still clear enough to read. Asenix. Lila recognized the name instantly. Asenix was a powerful painkiller withdrawn from the market 2 years earlier because of dangerous side effects. If the photograph had been taken 2 months earlier, as Bianca claimed, that bottle could not exist with its label intact like that. Bianca had used an old photograph, altered the date, and forgotten that tiny detail. Lila called Dante and showed him her discovery. Dante frowned, typed on the laptop for a moment, then nodded. You are right, he said, and I can do better than that. Dante was Marcus's tech expert who could penetrate any system given enough time. He began tracing the photos, analyzing hidden data, searching for signs of who edited them. 12 hours later, he had the answer. All these files were created on the same computer, he explained. Lines of code scrolling on the screen. And that computer belongs to Bianca Moretti. The IP address matches her penthouse. And the Adobe account used to edit the photos is registered under her email. She is not as clever as she thinks. Lila felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from her chest, but they did not stop there. When Dante dug deeper into Bianca's system, he found something even more frightening than fake evidence. Emails between Bianca and an underground chemist about a drug called digitalis concentrate. Lila knew that drug was extracted from foxglove and could cause a death that looked like natural heart failure if given in the right dose over time, leaving no trace undetectable in normal autopsy, perfect for assassination. In the emails, Bianca asked about the dosage needed for a man weighing about 85 kilograms and standing 1 meter 88 tall. She did not name him, but Lila knew exactly who it was. Marcus? She was planning to kill him. She would marry him, wait long enough to avoid suspicion, then slowly poison him to death, just as she had done to Vincent DeLuca, her former husband. This is what we need, Dante said, printing everything not only to prove you innocent, but to prove Bianca is plotting Marcus's murder. The council cannot ignore this. Lila looked at the stack of papers, feeling something she had forgotten long ago. Power. Not the power of money or weapons, but the power of truth. She had been pushed into this world like a pawn on a board, but now she would make the decisive move herself. Call Marcus, she told Dante. I have what he needs. Dante looked at her with something Lila had never seen before. Respect? You know, he said. At first I thought the boss chose you only because you appeared at the right moment. But now I understand he chose you because you are the only one strong enough to stand beside him. Lila did not answer. She only looked out the window where dawn was rising behind the tall buildings. The war was about to end, and this time she would no longer be the victim. The second council meeting was convened 3 days later in the same basement room of the Valenti estate, with the same 12 leaders seated around the long oak table. But this time the atmosphere was entirely different. This time Marcus held control. Salvatore sat in his old place, his expression confident as if he had already won. Bianca stood beside him, her triumphant smile still on her lips. Believing this meeting would officially condemn Lila and remove her from the Valenti family forever, she was wrong. When the doors opened and Lila stepped inside, a murmur spread around the table. She was no longer the trembling, frightened woman of the first meeting. She stood straight eyes forward, walking with steady steps in a simple but elegant black dress. Dante followed behind her, holding a leather case full of documents. What is that girl doing here? Bianca snapped, her voice shrill. I thought we had already decided about her. Marcus rose, his cold gaze sweeping the room. Today's meeting is not to condemn Lila Morgan. Today's meeting is to expose the truth. He nodded to Lila. She has something to say to the council. Lila stepped forward, facing the 12 most powerful men of the Valenti Empire, took a deep breath and began. The evidence Bianca Moretti presented in the previous meeting was all fake, she said, her voice clear and steady, and I can prove it. She signaled Dante to turn on the projector. The image Bianca had used appeared but now enlarged at the corner. Do you see this medicine bottle? Lila pointed. This is Asenix, a painkiller withdrawn from the market 2 years ago because of dangerous side effects. If this photograph were taken 2 months ago, as Bianca claims, this bottle could not exist. Therefore the photo is fake, altered from an older one. Murmurs rose. Bianca paled but tried to hold herself. Nonsense, she shouted. This is her scheme to escape guilt. Lila ignored her and continued. We traced the image files and found they were all created on the same computer. Dante displayed technical data. The IP address matches Bianca Moretti's penthouse, and the Adobe account used to edit the photos is registered under her personal email. Bianca Moretti not only accused me falsely, she personally fabricated evidence to frame me. The room began to erupt, the leaders looking at each other, at Bianca, at Salvatore, the tension sharp enough to cut. Bianca lunged toward Lila, her face purple with rage. "She is lying," she screamed. "It is all lies. Do not believe this cleaning woman." "But there is more," Lila said, her voice cold as ice. "We also found this." Dante projected emails between Bianca and an underground chemist. "This is Bianca Moretti's plan to poison Marcus Valenti." Lila explained she ordered digitalis concentrate, a drug that can cause a death that looks like natural heart failure. She asked about the dosage for a man weighing 85 kilograms, and 1.88 meters tall, exactly Marcus's. Measurements. She intended to marry him, then kill him just as she killed Vincent DeLuca, her former husband. Bianca lost control completely. She lunged at Lila with her hands raised, but two men stopped her. "Lies!" Bianca screamed, tears and mascara streaking her face. "It is all lies. Father, say something. Tell them this is a scheme." All eyes turned to Salvatore. The old man sat there cold and silent, but his silence spoke enough. "And there is more." Dante spoke for the first time. "We found messages between Bianca Moretti and Salvatore Valenti, showing Salvatore knew of the poisoning plan and approved it. He wanted to remove Marcus to regain full power." The room went dead still. The leaders looked at Salvatore not with reverence but with fury. A man who would kill his own son for power does not deserve to sit at the head of this table. Marcus stepped before his father, the two men facing each other with 25 years of hatred condensed in that moment. "You killed my mother," Marcus said, his voice low with pain, "and now you want to kill me too." Salvatore finally spoke. "You have always been too weak," he sneered, "like your mother." Marcus did not grow angry, he only looked at his father with tired sorrow. "No, father, I am only different from you. I still know what it means to be human." He turned to the council. "I call for a vote." The vote was swift and unanimous. Salvatore was removed, stripped of all power, and exiled to a distant estate under strict guard. Bianca was handed over to the Moretti family for internal handling, and everyone understood what that meant. As Salvatore was escorted out, he stopped beside Marcus. "You think you have won," he whispered. "But remember, Marcus, my blood runs in you. Sooner or later you will become me." Marcus looked at him once more, then turned away. "No, father," he said, "I will never become you because I have what you never had. I have a reason to live for others, not only for myself." 1 week after Salvatore was deposed and Bianca was handed over to the Moretti family, Marcus found Lila in the room where she had stayed for so many days, carrying a leather briefcase and a thick envelope. "Our agreement is complete," he said. "Setting the case on the table inside is $500,000. As promised, the envelope contains the papers for a new house in the suburbs, a safe area with a good school for Rosie, all her medical expenses have been paid. Her surgery will take place next month. At the best hospital in the city. You are free now, Lila." Lila looked at the case, the envelope, then at Marcus. She wanted to say something, to ask if this was really all they had, if that kiss, and those nights he held her hand meant anything, but she could not. She only nodded, took what he gave her, and walked away. Marcus did not stop her. He stood watching her, leave his face unreadable as on the day they first met. But in his eyes, Lila glimpsed something like pain. Rosie was waiting in the lobby with Nina. When she saw her mother, she ran and hugged Lila's legs. "Where are we going, Mommy?" "Home to a new place, my love," Lila said, her voice breaking somewhere beautiful and safe. "And Uncle Marcus?" Rosie asked, looking up. "Is he not coming?" Lila could not answer. She only lifted her child and walked out. But when the car drove away, Rosie began to cry, not from pain, not from fear, but from longing. "Mommy, I want to go back," Rosie sobbed. "I love Uncle Marcus. He is very sad if we go. Who will give him warm milk when he is sad? Who will talk to him when he comes home covered in blood? Who will make him laugh?" Lila held her tight, tears running down her own face, knowing her heart also ached, also longed to return to the penthouse she once thought was a prison. 3 days later, Nina came to Lila's new house, bringing a box of Rosie's favorite cookies and a message Lila needed to hear. "You are the first person who made him smile in 25 years, Nina said, sitting across from Lila in the small kitchen. "Since you left, he does not eat, he does not sleep. He only sits in the dark, staring at the glass of milk Rosie once made. For him," Lila looked down at her tea, "he let me go. Because he thinks you deserve a better life." Nina replied, "He thinks his world is too dangerous, too dark for you. And Rosie, he loves you. Lila loves you enough to let you go, even though it destroys him. But that world is changing." Nina continued, "Because of you, Because of Rosie, he is turning the Valenti empire toward legal business. He is cutting ties with the underworld. He is trying to become the man you and Rosie deserve. Lila sat in silence all night after Nina left, thinking about her life, about what she had lost, what she had found about Marcus, about the devil she once feared, about the man she loved, and she made her decision. 1 week later, Lila stood at the gate of the Valenti estate, holding Rosie's hand. "Tell Marcus Valenti, his fiancée is waiting," she told the guard. Marcus ran out as if afraid it was a dream, standing there, staring at Lila and Rosie in disbelief. "Why?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Because you gave me the choice to leave," Lila answered. "But you never asked if I wanted to stay. Because Rosie insisted on coming back to give Uncle Marcus warm milk, and because I want to come back too." Rosie ran to hug Marcus's leg. "I missed you," she said, looking up. "You are Rosie's monster. Rosie loves you." Marcus knelt and hugged the child, and for the second time in his life, after the night of warm milk in the kitchen, he cried in front of someone else. 6 months later, life had completely changed. Rosie's surgery was successful, her small heart now beating strong and steady. She ran and played in the garden, laughing with Mr. Buttons. Nothing like the pale child once breathing through oxygen in the hospital. Lila returned to medical school, finishing the years she had left. With Marcus's support, she would become the doctor she once dreamed of and use her knowledge to save children like Rosie. Marcus kept his promise. The Valenti empire gradually shifted to legal business, from real estate to hotels to financial investments. He was still the boss, still powerful, but his hands were no longer stained with blood. They had no grand wedding, only a simple ceremony at City Hall with Dante as witness and Rosie as flower girl, wearing a white dress, holding a small bouquet, smiling the entire time. Every evening, they ate dinner together at the small kitchen table, not the grand dining room, talking about work, about school, about ordinary things ordinary families talk about. And that was the greatest miracle of all. One night, as Lila was putting Rosie to bed, the child suddenly asked, "Mommy, is Daddy Marcus a bad man?" Lila looked at Marcus, sitting on the bed, reading under the warm yellow light, thought of the path they walked through, darkness and light, pain and healing. "Your father did bad things, my love," she answered honestly. "But he is trying to be better every day, and that is what matters. Not what we were in the past, but who we are trying to become now." Rosie nodded seriously, like a tiny philosopher. "Like Rosie," she said. "Rosie once took candy without asking, but now Rosie asks." Marcus laughed softly, warmth filling the room. Lila looked at him, at her daughter, at the life she never dared dream of. A wrong door opened had become an escape for all three. Not an escape from problems, but a step toward something better, more real, and in a world full of darkness and schemes that truth was the most precious thing of all. Dear friends, the story ends here, but the lessons it leaves behind remain with us. Sometimes life pushes us into situations that seem to have no way out, but it is in the deepest darkness that we discover the strength we never knew we had. Leela is proof of that, a single mother willing to do anything for her child, who in the end found love where she least expected it. Marcus is proof of change, that it is never too late to become a better person, that even hearts that seem frozen can melt before true love. And Rosie is proof of innocence and kindness, that sometimes a child can see what the whole world cannot. And what about you? How did this story make you feel? Did it remind you of someone in your real life? Was there a moment that made you cry or smile? Please share with us in the comments below. We want to hear what is in your heart. If you liked this story, please press the like button to support us, and share this video with your friends and family, so they can experience this emotional journey as well. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on ACE notifications so you do not miss our stories every day. Finally, we wish all of you watching this video good health, a joyful and peaceful life every day. And remember, no matter how hard life becomes, there is always light at the end of the tunnel, and sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places. Goodbye, and see you again in the next video.